All right, so today we're diving into a life that, wasn't just lived, it was a test, a full-on experiment. And we're not just talking about some old historical figure here. This is the story of a man who basically turned his entire life into a radical 60-year experiment. It's pretty wild, so let's get right into it.
Okay, let me start by asking you something. And be honest, could you actually live like this? No salary hitting your bank account, no savings to fall back on, and you could never ever ask anyone for help. I mean, think about it. Just trust, total trust that everything you need day in and day out would just show up. It sounds completely insane, doesn't it?
Well, believe it or not, there was this guy in the 19th century, George Mueller, who decided, yeah, I'm going to do that. For him, it wasn't some hypothetical question. He made it the central challenge of his entire life. And he didn't just try it for a week or a month. He lived out the answer for more than 60 years. And I'm telling you, his story, it's one of the most extreme transformations you will ever hear about. So to really get a grip on this experiment, you first have to understand the man at the center of it. And trust me on this, if you were lining up candidates for a life of, deep faith and rock-solid integrity, the young George Mueller would have been the absolute last person on your list. Not even close. And look, we're not talking about a few youthful mistakes here, like stealing a candy bar. By the time he was 10 years old, he was a habitual thief. He was an expert at lying, and he systematically deceived his own dad, even stealing government money that his father was in charge of. He ended up in jail for fraud at 16, and get this, while he's in prison, he's making up even crazier lies about his crimes just to look cool in front of another thief. Just unbelievable. But wait, it gets even crazier. Here's the real kicker. His father knew all of this, and yet he was paying for him to become a clergyman. So you've got George Mueller, a student of divinity, who, by his own account, owned 300 books, but didn't even have a Bible. He was basically a total moral and spiritual void, just driven by whatever felt good at the moment. And then it all changed. It wasn't some big, dramatic lightning bolt from the sky. It wasn't some huge public spectacle. Nope. It was just a quiet Saturday evening back in November of 1825. So a friend invited him to this little prayer meeting at someone's house, and something just clicked. For the first time in his entire life, he was 20 years old, he saw someone actually get on their knees to pray. He heard these prayers that weren't fancy, just real. And when he went to bed that night, he said he felt this new and strange peace. That was it. That was the moment that started a complete, total revolution in his life. I mean, you can't overstate how huge this change was. The guy who was basically a professional thief and liar became a man known for prayer. The son who literally stole money from his own dad now put all his trust in a heavenly father. His entire life went from this chaotic, selfish mess to being laser-focused on one single powerful conviction. But this wasn't just some emotional phase, This transformation led to a whole new philosophy for living, a systematic one. Mueller actually sat down and created a set of hard and fast rules for this lifelong experiment in trust. So let's break down what those rules were. Okay, so these were the pillars of his whole experiment. First up, no more family money. He cut himself off from his dad's support completely. He felt he couldn't really be independent if he was still cashing his dad's checks. Second, no fixed salary. He was a pastor, but he refused to take a regular paycheck, believing it just created a class system in the church. Third, and this is where it gets really wild, he made a vow to never ask another human being for money or help, ever. All requests went straight to God, and that's it. And fourth, absolutely no debt. He and his wife literally made a pact that they would rather starve to death than buy something they couldn't pay for upfront. And Mueller himself admitted that this decision, the one about never telling anyone what he needed, that was the hardest part. Harder than giving up his salary. I mean, it's just a complete reversal of how the entire world operates, right? So he's got his rules, his principles are all set. Now he needs a place to actually put them to the test. A kind of real-world laboratory for this crazy experiment. And that place was going to be the city of Bristol in England. He gets to Bristol in 1832, and you have to picture it. This was a busy, gritty port city. Lots of poverty, lots of social problems. I mean, it was the perfect high-stakes environment to see if this radical philosophy of his would actually work, or if it would just completely fall apart. And when he started, it was about as humble as you can get. We're not talking about some big fancy institution. It was just him and a colleague and a tiny group of 7 people all agreeing to live by these rules. But from that tiny little seed, something absolutely massive grew. We're talking 5 huge orphanages that ended up caring for more than 10,000 children over the years. And the craziest part? It was all funded without ever asking a single soul for a dime. Okay, so what do we do with a story like this? What's the big takeaway here? What's the core idea we can actually pull from this wild 19th century experiment and maybe even think about today? Well, I think the crucial thing to grasp is this. From the moment he had that turnaround, Mueller's entire life became a documented 60-year-long test of one single powerful question. And that question was, is it actually possible to live a life that's guided by absolute conviction?
Let's give this idea a name. Let's call it radical conviction. And what that means is basically aligning your entire life, your money, your day-to-day actions, your plans for the future with one single unwavering principle. And you just don't back down from it, no matter what happens.
And when you look at it through that lens, you realize his story is bigger than just religious belief. It's really about using a core principle, whatever that might be, as the entire framework for one of the most high-stakes human experiments in pure trust that's ever been tried. And that kind of brings everything full circle, right back to you. George Mueller chose his principle, and he took it to the absolute extreme. So it leaves all of us with a really powerful question to think about. What's the one principle in your life that, if you lived it out that radically, would completely define you? What would your experiment look like?